Spring 1892, Nebraska Territory. Emma Wade stood in the mud outside what used to be her family's farmhouse and watched everything she owned being loaded into a wagon. The banker's men worked quickly, efficiently, like locusts stripping a field. Her father's tools, her mother's quilts, the grandfather clock that had crossed the prairie in a covered wagon 30 years ago. She was 28 years old, and she had nothing left. Malachi Hargrove sat on his horse at a safe distance, watching his men work. The banker was a thin man with pale eyes and a smile that never reached them. He'd held the mortgage on the Wade farm for 5 years. When her parents died last winter, he'd come calling with papers and deadlines Emma couldn't meet. The drought had killed half the crops. The hard winter finished the rest. She'd asked for more time. He'd refused. She'd scraped together half the payment. He'd demanded all of it, immediately, or he'd take the farm. Now he was taking it anyway. "You have until sundown to clear out, Miss Wade," Hargrove called from his horse. "After that, you're trespassing." Emma said nothing. Her hands were fists at her sides, nails cutting into her palms. If she opened her mouth, she'd scream. Or worse, she'd cry, and she wouldn't give him that satisfaction. One of Hargrove's men, a thick-necked brute named Cord, shoved past her carrying her father's rifle. She grabbed for it instinctively. He backhanded her. Emma hit the mud hard, tasting blood. "Leave her be," a voice said. Male, deep, with a southern drawl that made every word sound lazy and dangerous at the same time. Emma looked up. A stranger stood in the road, maybe 30 yards away. Tall, lean, wearing a worn Confederate gray shirt under a brown leather vest. He had dark hair, a weathered face, and the kind of stillness that came from men who'd seen too much violence. Cord sneered. "This ain't your business, Reb." "Maybe not," the stranger agreed. He didn't move. But hitting a woman for trying to save her daddy's rifle seems like poor manners, even for a thief. The yard went quiet. Hargrove's other men stopped loading and turned to watch. There were 6 of them, all armed. The stranger was alone. Hargrove urged his horse forward. "You must be new in town, friend. I'm Malachi Hargrove. I own the bank, the general store, and half the land between here and the Platte River. This farm is mine by legal right. The woman is trespassing." "Is that so?" The stranger's tone was mild. His eyes weren't. "Funny kind of legal right that needs 6 armed men to enforce it." "Who are you?" "Name's Isaac Matthews. And I'm thinking maybe Miss Wade here would like her father's rifle back." Cord still held the rifle. He looked at Hargrove, who gave a slight nod. Cord tossed the rifle into the mud at Emma's feet. "There," Hargrove said pleasantly. "No harm done. Now move along, Matthews. This doesn't concern you." Isaac Matthews finally moved. He walked forward slowly, his hands loose at his sides, until he stood between Emma and Hargrove's men. He picked up the rifle, wiped the mud off carefully, and offered it to Emma. She took it with shaking hands. Up close, she could see the scar along his jaw, the way his blue eyes held a kind of cold fury that reminded her of winter ice. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked quietly. Emma nodded. Her cheek throbbed where Cord had hit her. Isaac looked at the mark, then at Cord. Something shifted in his expression. "Touch her again," he said conversationally, "and I'll break every bone in your hand." Cord reached for his gun. Isaac's hand moved faster. The sound of a hammer cocking froze everyone in place. "Easy," Hargrove said sharply. "We don't want trouble." "Then get off this woman's land." "It's my land. Legally purchased." "Stolen," Emma said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "You changed the payment date. You forged my father's signature on the extension papers. I have proof." Hargrove's pale eyes flickered. "Careful, Miss Wade. Slander is a serious accusation. So is fraud." The banker smiled. "You think anyone will believe you? A desperate woman trying to keep land she can't afford?" He looked at Isaac. "And you, Matthews? You're a stranger here, a Confederate drifter with no stake in this town. Walk away while you can." Isaac didn't lower his gun. "How about this? You load everything back into that house. You give Miss Wade her deed and her mortgage papers, and you ride back to town to think real hard about your life choices." "Or what?" "Or I start telling people what I saw. A banker stealing a woman's farm with forged papers. That's the kind of story folks remember." Hargrove's smile vanished. "You don't know what you're interfering with. Then educate me." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hargrove gestured to his men. "Put it back. All of it." Cord sputtered. "Boss." "I said put it back." Hargrove's voice was ice. He looked at Emma. "This isn't over, Miss Wade. I'll be back with the sheriff and the proper paperwork. We'll see whose story holds up in court." He wheeled his horse around and rode away. His men followed, leaving Emma's belongings piled in the yard. Emma stood in the mud, rifle in hand, watching them disappear down the road. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She turned to Isaac Matthews. "Thank you," she managed. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "You'd have figured something out." Isaac holstered his gun. "You've got that look about you. Survivor. I don't feel like one right now." "Survivors rarely do." He studied her for a moment. "You said you have proof he forged those papers?" Emma nodded. "My father kept copies of everything. Dated, signed, witnessed. Hargrove changed the dates after my father died and forged a signature giving him the right to foreclose immediately. But I have the originals hidden." "Then why didn't you show them to the sheriff?" "Because the sheriff is Hargrove's cousin." Isaac let out a long breath. "Of course he is." He looked around the muddy yard, at the farmhouse with its sagging porch, at the barn that needed repairs. "How long since you've eaten?" The question surprised her. "I don't see how that's—" "Answer the question, Miss Wade." Emma's pride wanted her to lie. Her empty stomach wouldn't let her. 2 days. Maybe 3. Isaac picked up one of the crates Hargrove's men had dropped. "Let's get this stuff back inside. Then I'm making you something to eat. After that, we're going to figure out how to deal with your banker problem." "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Isaac paused, the crate balanced on his shoulder. "Let's just say I've got some experience with powerful men taking things that don't belong to them. And I'm tired of watching it happen." There was something in his voice, some old wound, that made Emma look at him more carefully. The Confederate gray shirt, the Southern accent, the way he held himself like a man who'd learned to expect violence and was always ready for it. "You fought in the war," she said. "I did. For the Confederacy. I did. No apology, no justification, just fact." Emma should have sent him away. Nebraska had fought for the Union. Her own father had nearly joined up before a bad leg kept him home. But Isaac Matthews had just saved her farm, and possibly her life. And she wasn't fool enough to turn away help when she desperately needed it. "All right," she said, "but I'm cooking. It's my kitchen." Isaac smiled for the first time. It transformed his face, softened the hard edges. "Yes, ma'am." They worked together in silence, hauling her belongings back into the house. Emma's muscles ached, her face throbbed, and her hands were raw from gripping the rifle so tightly. But with each piece of furniture returned to its place, with each quilt refolded, and each dish set back on its shelf, she felt something shift inside her. Anger, cold and bright, and clarifying. Malachi Hargrove had tried to destroy her. He'd failed. And now, she was going to make sure he paid for every moment of fear and humiliation he'd put her through. By the time the sun was setting, the house looked almost normal again. Emma stood in the kitchen, making coffee and frying salt pork with what little food she had left. Isaac sat at the table, cleaning his revolver with practiced efficiency. "Tell me about Hargrove," he said. Emma poured coffee and brought it to the table. "He came to town about 10 years ago, opened the bank, bought the general store, started lending money to farmers. At first, everyone loved him. Low interest rates, reasonable terms. But then people started losing their farms. Always just when they were about to make a payment. Always with some technicality in the paperwork. And the sheriff does nothing. The sheriff is his cousin, like I said. And Hargrove's men are really just hired guns. Cord, the one who hit me, has killed at least 3 men that I know of. Claims they were all self-defense." Emma set the coffee cup down harder than she meant to. "He's building an empire on stolen land and broken families. And no one will stand up to him, because he controls the law." Isaac was quiet for a moment, his hand still on the gun. "How many men does he have?" "6 that I've seen regularly. Maybe more. And you're planning to fight him? Alone?" "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice." Isaac reassembled the revolver with quick, sure movements. "The smart choice would be to take what you can carry and start over somewhere else." Emma turned from the stove. "Would you? If it was your land, your family's legacy, would you just walk away?" Isaac met her eyes. Something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. "No," he said quietly. "I wouldn't." "Then don't ask me to." They ate in silence. The salt pork was tough, and the coffee was bitter, but it was food, and Emma hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. Isaac ate methodically, the way soldiers did, not tasting, just fueling. When they finished, Emma cleared the plates and finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind all day. "Why are you here, Mr. Matthews? In Nebraska, I mean. A man like you, with your skills, you could be anywhere." Isaac stared into his coffee cup. "Running from my past. Same as everyone else who ends up this far west." "What are you running from?" "Ghosts." He looked up at her. "I did things in the war I'm not proud of. Followed orders I should have questioned. When it ended, I went home to Georgia and found there was nothing left. House burned, family scattered. So I started drifting. Thought maybe if I moved far enough, I could leave it all behind." "Can you?" "No." The word was heavy with regret. Turns out you carry your ghosts with you wherever you go. He pushed back from the table. But maybe I can do something right for a change. Help someone who deserves it. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. You don't owe me anything. I know. But I'm offering anyway. Isaac stood. I'll sleep in your barn tonight if that's all right. Tomorrow, we'll figure out our next move. Our next move? You think I'm walking away now? Hargrove knows I got involved. He'll come after me too. Might as well see this through together. Emma wanted to argue, to tell him this was her fight and she didn't need help. But the truth was, she did need help. Desperately. And Isaac Matthews, with his Confederate past and his quiet strength and his sad eyes, might be the only chance she had. All right, she said. But tomorrow, I want to show you something. The proof I mentioned. If we're going to fight Hargrove, we need to do it smart. Isaac nodded. At the door, he paused. Miss Wade? That was brave, what you did today. Standing up to him even when you were scared. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. That's what brave is. Being terrified and doing it anyway. He touched the brim of his hat. Good night. After he left, Emma locked the door and sank into her father's old chair. Her body ached, her face throbbed, and her future was uncertain. But for the first time since her parents died, she didn't feel completely alone. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft and steady. Spring rain, her father used to say, was good luck. It washed away the winter and made way for new growth. Emma hoped he was right. The next morning dawned gray and wet. Emma woke before sunrise, as she always did, and started the stove. Her face was swollen where cord had hit her, a purple bruise blooming along her cheekbone. She touched it gingerly and felt anger flare hot in her chest. She was making coffee when Isaac knocked. He looked like he hadn't slept much, his hair damp from rain, his shirt wrinkled. But his eyes were alert, and his gun was clean. Morning, he said. Brought you something. He handed her a cloth bundle. Inside was fresh bread, still warm, and a chunk of cheese. Emma stared at it. Where did you get this? Rode into town early. There's a widow named Mrs. Patterson who bakes. She heard about what happened yesterday. Sent this for you. Said to tell you half the town is on your side. Half the town won't help me when Hargrove comes back. Maybe not openly, but information is a weapon too. And Mrs. Patterson had plenty to share. Isaac poured himself coffee without asking. Turns out you're not the first person Hargrove squeezed. 3 other families lost their farms in the last 2 years. Same pattern. Loans, missed payments, forged papers, foreclosure. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Do any of them still have proof? One does. A man named Thomas Brennan. He's working as a ranch hand now, but he kept his original mortgage papers. Says they prove Hargrove changed the terms after his signature. Then why hasn't he gone to the law? Because the law is Hargrove's cousin, remember? Brennan tried. The sheriff laughed him out of the office. Isaac leaned against the counter. But 3 families with proof of fraud? That's harder to ignore, especially if we can get the territorial marshal involved. Emma's heart hammered with hope and fear. The marshal is in Omaha. That's a 3-day ride. 4 in this mud. But it might be our only shot. Hargrove will come back before then. He said he'd return with the sheriff and proper paperwork. Then we make sure he can't find what he's looking for. Isaac set down his coffee cup. Show me that proof you mentioned. Emma led him upstairs to her parents' bedroom. It felt wrong, invasive, to have a man in this space where her mother had died just 4 months ago. But Isaac moved with quiet respect, not touching anything, just watching as Emma knelt by the bed and pried up a loose floorboard. Inside was a metal box. Emma pulled it out, her hands shaking slightly, and opened it. Papers. Dated, signed, witnessed. Her father's careful handwriting documented every payment, every extension, every conversation with Hargrove. And underneath, the original mortgage agreement with terms that gave them 2 more years before foreclosure was even possible. Isaac read through them carefully. This is solid. Your father was thorough. He was a clerk before he became a farmer. He believed in documentation. Emma's throat tightened. He would have fought this if he'd lived. He would have known what to do. You know what to do, Isaac said quietly. You're fighting. That's what he'd want. Emma closed the box. I need to contact Thomas Brennan and the other families. If we can gather all the proof together and get it to the marshal. A sound from downstairs cut her off. Horses. Multiple horses. Isaac moved to the window. His expression went flat and dangerous. Hargrove, with at least 10 men this time. Emma's stomach dropped. He's not waiting for the sheriff. No. He's coming to destroy the evidence. Isaac turned from the window. We need to leave. Now. I'm not running. Emma. It was the first time he'd used her first name. Listen to me. There are too many of them. If we stay, they'll take the box, burn the house, and probably kill us both. We leave now, hide the evidence somewhere safe, and regroup. Emma wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at her to stand her ground, to defend her home. But Isaac was right. Dead martyrs didn't win fights. The Brennan Ranch, she said quickly. It's about 6 miles northeast. If Thomas still has his papers, we can gather everything and head for Omaha together. Isaac grabbed the metal box. Then we go. Can you ride? Yes. Fast? A monthly issue. Bow in when it's silent. Fast enough. They ran downstairs. Emma grabbed her father's rifle and a canvas bag, stuffing in food, ammunition, and what little money she had left. Outside, she could hear Hargrove's voice, loud and confident. Miss Wade! I know you're in there! Come out peacefully and this doesn't have to get ugly! Isaac saddled 2 horses in record time. Emma's mare, Rosie, and his own bay gelding. He strapped the metal box to his saddle, helped Emma mount, and swung up onto his own horse in one smooth motion. Back door? He asked. Through the kitchen. They rode out the back as Hargrove's men kicked in the front door. Emma heard shouts, the crash of breaking furniture, but she didn't look back. She leaned low over Rosie's neck and let the mare run. The prairie was a sea of mud. Rosie slipped twice, but kept her footing. Isaac rode beside Emma, not ahead, matching her pace. Behind them, she heard more shouts, then gunshots. "They're following," she yelled over the thunder of hooves. "I know. Just keep riding." The Brennan Ranch seemed impossibly far away. Emma's lungs burned, her hands ached from gripping the reins, and fear made every second stretch into eternity. But Rosie was strong, and Isaac was there. A solid presence beside her, and slowly the gunshots faded into the distance. They rode for an hour before Isaac finally signaled to slow. Emma pulled Rosie to a walk, gasping for breath. Her dress was soaked through, her braid had come loose, and she was shaking from cold and adrenaline. Isaac guided them into a thick stand of cottonwoods near the Platte River. "We'll rest the horses here. Give Hargrove's men time to lose our trail in this mud." Emma slid off Rosie and nearly collapsed. Isaac caught her, his hands steadying her. For a moment they stood close, his face inches from hers, and Emma saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Not pity, not even just concern. Something warmer, more dangerous. Then he stepped back. "You did good. Most people would have panicked. I was panicking. I was just panicking while riding very fast." That surprised a laugh out of him. Emma found herself smiling despite everything. There was something surreal about standing in the rain, muddy and exhausted and hunted, and finding humor in it. Isaac checked the metal box to make sure it was secure, then turned to study the river. "We'll follow the Platte northeast. Harder to track us if we stay near water. Should reach Brennan's place by late afternoon if we keep moving." Emma rubbed Rosie's neck. "Thank you for everything. I know this isn't your fight." "It is now." Isaac looked at her steadily. "Hargrove saw me with you. He knows I have the evidence. Even if you rode away right now and left me behind, he'd still come after you because you're a witness to what he did. We're in this together whether we like it or not." "Do you? Like it? I mean..." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "I spent 4 years fighting for something I stopped believing in halfway through. Lost friends, killed men, watched my whole world burn. When it ended, I swore I'd never fight for anything again." He met her eyes. "But this feels different. This feels like something worth fighting for." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks despite the cold rain. "You barely know me. I know you stood up to armed men to save your father's rifle. I know you'd rather die than give up your family's land. I know you're brave and stubborn, and you've got more fight in you than most men I served with." His voice softened. "That's enough." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain fell steadily, and somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried. Emma wanted to say something, to acknowledge what was building between them, but she didn't have words for it. Not yet. "We should keep moving," Isaac said finally. They rode through the afternoon, following the river, staying in cover when they could. The rain never stopped, just varied between drizzle and downpour. Emma's clothes were plastered to her skin, her fingers numb with cold. But Isaac kept checking on her, making sure she was all right. And somehow, that made it bearable. They reached the Brennan Ranch as the sun was setting. It was a small, run-down place, not much more than a cabin and a corral. A man in his 50s came out when he heard their horses, a shotgun in his hands. "Thomas Brennan?" Emma called. "I'm Emma Wade. This is Isaac Matthews. We need your help." Brennan squinted at them through the rain. Recognition dawned. "Emma Wade. Heard about what happened to your folks. Sorry for your loss." He lowered the shotgun slightly. "What kind of help?" "The kind that involves standing up to Malachi Hargrove." Brennan's expression went carefully blank. "Don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do," Emma said firmly. "He stole your ranch the same way he tried to steal mine. Forged papers, changed terms, foreclosed before you had a chance. And I know you kept proof." Brennan looked at Isaac. "Who's he?" "Someone who helped me escape when Hargrove came with guns instead of lawyers," Emma said. "Someone who's willing to fight. Are you?" For a long moment, Brennan just stood there in the rain. Then he sighed. "Get inside. You're both half frozen." The cabin was small, but warm. Brennan's wife, a thin woman named Sarah, made them coffee and found dry blankets. Emma changed into a borrowed dress while Isaac stayed politely in the main room. When she emerged, Brennan had papers spread on the table. "Here's my proof. Original mortgage, dated and signed. Shows I had 3 more years before any foreclosure was possible. But Hargrove's papers said I was already late, gave me 30 days, then took the ranch when I couldn't pay." Isaac studied the documents. "This matches Emma's situation exactly. Same pattern, same forgery technique. How many other families?" "At least 5 that I know of," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe more who were too ashamed to admit it. We need to gather all the evidence we can and get it to the territorial marshal in Omaha," Emma said. "It's the only way to stop him." Brennan shook his head. "You don't understand. Hargrove's got reach. The local law won't help, and by the time you get to Omaha, he'll have burned every piece of evidence and silenced every witness." "Then we move fast," Isaac said. "We leave tonight. Gather whoever else has proof on the way. Present everything to the marshal together. Make it impossible for him to ignore." "And if Hargrove catches us before we get there?" Sarah asked. Isaac's expression went cold and hard. "Then he'll learn that some Confederate soldiers know how to fight, even when the war's over." Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. This was the man Isaac had been in the war. The soldier who'd done things he regretted. And he was offering to become that man again for her. "I don't want you killing anyone on my behalf," she said quietly. "Neither do I," Isaac replied. "But I won't let him kill you either." Brennan looked between them, then at his wife. Some silent communication passed between the couple. Finally, Brennan nodded. "All right. I'm in. There's a family about 10 miles west, the Johnsons. They lost their place last year. And the Caldwells south of town. If we can reach them by morning." "We can," Isaac said. "We ride in shifts, sleep in the saddle if we have to. Every hour we wait is an hour Hargrove has to organize a manhunt." They planned through the evening. Sarah packed food and supplies. Brennan gathered his papers and his best rifle. Emma felt exhaustion pulling at her, but adrenaline kept her sharp. This was happening. They were fighting back. Just before midnight, Isaac found Emma standing outside, staring at the rain-soaked prairie. "You should rest while you can," he said. "I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see Hargrove's men breaking into my house, taking everything." She turned to face him. "What if this doesn't work? What if we get to Omaha and the marshal doesn't care? What if Hargrove wins anyway?" Isaac stepped closer. "Then we'll find another way. And another after that. We keep fighting until we win, or we can't fight anymore." He paused. "But I don't think you're the kind of woman who stops fighting." Emma looked up at him. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat, and in the dim light from the cabin window, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of Hargrove. Of what happens if I lose everything again. Of being alone." "You're not alone." Isaac's voice was rough. "Not anymore." The air between them felt charged, electric. Emma's heart hammered as Isaac reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched the bruise on her cheek. His fingers were calloused and warm. "He'll pay for this," Isaac said quietly. "I promise you that." Emma's breath caught. She should step back, maintain distance. Remember, she barely knew this man. But something in his touch, in the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, made her lean into his hand instead. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. "You could have kept riding yesterday. You didn't have to get involved." Isaac's thumb brushed along her jaw. "Maybe I'm tired of running from fights that matter. Maybe I needed a reason to stop drifting." His eyes searched hers. "Or maybe the moment I saw you standing in that mud, refusing to back down even when you were terrified, I knew I'd found something worth staying for." Emma's pulse raced. "Isaac!" "We should go," Brennan called from the doorway. "Horses are ready." The moment shattered. Isaac dropped his hand and stepped back, and Emma felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. But when they mounted up and rode out into the rainy darkness, Isaac stayed close beside her, and somehow, that was enough. They rode through the night, collecting families and evidence. The Johnsons lived in a soddy on the western edge of Hargrove's Reach. Matthew Johnson was a big man with sad eyes who handed over his forged papers without a word, just kissed his wife and children, and joined their group. The Caldwells were harder to convince. Peter Caldwell had been beaten down by loss, his spirit broken. But his wife Rachel had fire in her eyes that reminded Emma of herself. "We lost everything," Rachel said fiercely. "Our home, our savings, our future. If there's even a chance to make Hargrove pay, I want it." By dawn, they were 6 riders with 5 families worth of evidence. Emma's exhaustion was bone deep, but determination kept her upright in the saddle. Isaac rode at the front of their group, rifle across his lap, constantly scanning for threats. They stopped briefly to rest the horses and eat cold food from Sarah's packs. Emma sat on a fallen log, trying not to fall asleep. Isaac settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "How are you holding up?" he asked quietly. "I'll make it." "That's not what I asked." Emma looked at him. His face was drawn with tiredness, but his eyes were still alert. "I'm terrified we'll fail. I'm terrified we'll get caught before we reach Omaha. I'm terrified this is all for nothing. Fear's not a bad thing. Keeps you sharp." Isaac offered her a piece of jerky. "But we're not going to fail. We've got evidence, witnesses, and determination. That counts for something." "Does it? Against a man with money and power and no conscience?" "It does if we make it count." Isaac's voice was firm. "Emma, listen to me. I've fought in battles where we were outnumbered 10-1. I've seen desperate causes win through sheer refusal to quit. This isn't over until we say it's over." Emma wanted to believe him. She took the jerky and forced herself to eat, though her stomach was in knots. Around them, the other families were preparing to ride again. Brennan was checking weapons. Johnson was helping his horse that had thrown a shoe. The Caldwells were arguing in low voices about something. "Isaac," Emma said suddenly, "if this goes wrong, if Hargrove catches us, I want you to promise me something. Don't talk like that. Promise me you'll take the evidence and run. Get it to the marshal, no matter what. Don't try to be a hero." Isaac turned to face her fully. "I'm not leaving you. You might have to." "No." His voice was hard. "I left men behind in the war. Good men. I can still hear them screaming when I close my eyes. I'm not doing that again. We stay together, or we go down together. Those are the only options." Emma's throat tightened. "You barely know me." "I know enough." Isaac's expression softened slightly. "And I'm not losing you. Not to Hargrove, not to anyone. So stop asking me to." Before Emma could respond, Peter Caldwell called out, "Riders coming! From the south!" Everyone scrambled for cover. Isaac pulled Emma behind a thick stand of brush, his body shielding hers, his rifle ready. Emma's heart pounded as she peered through the branches. 3 riders emerged from the morning mist. But they weren't Hargrove's men. They were a marshal's deputy and 2 territorial rangers, and they were heading northeast toward Omaha. Isaac stepped out carefully, hands visible. "Marshal's deputy?" The lead rider pulled up, hand on his gun. "Who's asking?" "Isaac Matthews. I've got 6 citizens here who need to report a crime to the territorial marshal. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and land theft by a banker named Malachi Hargrove." The deputy's eyes narrowed. "Hargrove? Out of Crawford? You know him?" "Know of him. We've had complaints before, but nothing stuck. He's got friends in the territorial government." The deputy looked at their group, taking in the exhausted faces and determined expressions. "What kind of evidence you got?" Emma stepped forward and handed over her metal box. "Original mortgage papers. Signed, dated, witnessed, proving Hargrove changed the terms after my father's death and forged signatures to justify foreclosure." The deputy examined the papers carefully. His expression grew darker with each document. Finally, he looked up. "This is solid. Real solid." He glanced at his rangers. "How many families you got here?" 5, Brennan said. "All with similar evidence." "And Hargrove knows you're running?" "He's probably hunting us right now," Isaac said. "He came to Emma's farm with 10 armed men yesterday. Tried to destroy the evidence." The deputy swore under his breath. "All right. Here's what's going to happen. You folks are riding with us to Omaha. Safety in numbers. Marshal Hayes needs to see this, and he needs to see you alive to testify." He looked at Isaac. "You know how to use that rifle?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Because if Hargrove's as desperate as you say, he might try something stupid." The deputy wheeled his horse around. "Mount up, people. We ride hard and we ride smart. No heroics, no splitting up. We get to Omaha, we get justice. Clear?" A ragged cheer went up from the group. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. They had help. Real help. For the first time since her parents died, she felt a flicker of genuine hope. They rode through the day in a tight group, the deputy and rangers keeping watch. Emma found herself riding beside Isaac, their horses matching pace naturally. Neither spoke much, but there was comfort in the silence, in the steady presence beside her. Late afternoon brought trouble. One of the rangers spotted dust on the horizon. Riders, moving fast. "How many?" the deputy called. "Can't tell yet. At least 6, maybe more." The deputy swore. "Hargrove's men. Has to be." He scanned the terrain. There was a rocky outcropping ahead with a few scraggly trees. "There. We make a stand if we have to, but we keep moving if we can." "Johnson. Brennan. You armed?" Both men held up rifles. Isaac already had his out. The deputy nodded grimly. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But if they start shooting, you protect these families. Understood?" "Understood," Isaac said. The riders behind them grew closer. Emma's hands shook on the reins, but she forced herself to stay calm. Rosie sensed her tension and tossed her head nervously. "Easy, girl," Emma murmured. "We're all right. We're going to be all right." Isaac moved closer, his leg brushing hers. "Stay near me," he said quietly. "If shooting starts, get behind those rocks and stay down. Don't be brave. Be safe." "Isaac, Isen moored or supposed to key, what spas? Sulast the rounder. 2 months leech, and then tours were not her him. You were there in this place where lost whiles white. Last the lisk tired. Going that dranding attention kiner. Paulo fell might have done, call that crying the placador spores. Promise me, Emma." She met his eyes and saw the fear there, barely controlled. Not fear for himself, fear for her. "I promise." The pursuing riders were close enough now to count. 8 men, all armed, and at the front was Cord, Hargrove's enforcer. Emma's bruised cheek throbbed at the sight of him. The deputy called out, "That's far enough. This is official martial business. Turn back now, or face federal charges." Cord reined in his horse, but didn't turn back. "We're here for Emma Wade and some stolen property. Hand her over, and we'll be on our way. Miss Wade is a witness in a federal investigation. She's under our protection. You want to dispute that? Take it up with Marshal Hayes in Omaha. Or we could just take her now and save everyone the trouble." The deputy's hand moved to his gun. That would be a mistake. For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. 8 against 9, but Hargrove's men were hardened gunfighters, and half their group were farmers. The odds weren't good. Then Isaac urged his horse forward. "Cord, is it?" Cord's eyes narrowed. "The Confederate. Hargrove wants you dead most of all." "I'm sure he does. But here's the thing." Isaac's voice was conversational, almost lazy. "These federal men have jurisdiction. You attack them, you're not just facing a marshal. You're facing the territorial government. Every lawman in Nebraska will hunt you down. Worth it to get our hands on that evidence. Is it?" Isaac's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because I'm looking at 8 men who signed on to be hired guns for a banker. You beat up farmers, burn property, maybe fire a few shots to scare folks. But taking on federal marshals? That's a hanging offense. And for what? So Malachi Hargrove can keep stealing land?" Cord shifted in his saddle. Some of the men behind him looked uncertain. Isaac pressed on. "How much is he paying you?" $50 a month? 100? Is that worth dying for? Because if you draw on these marshals, some of you will die. Maybe all of you. And Hargrove will find new men to replace you before your bodies are cold. Shut up. Ask yourself if you trust him to protect you after this goes sideways. Because he won't. He'll deny everything, say you acted without orders, leave you twisting in the wind. Isaac's voice hardened. You want to risk a noose for a man who sees you as disposable? Be my guest. But don't say you weren't warned. The silence stretched. Emma held her breath. Beside her, the deputy had his hand on his gun, ready to draw. The other rangers were positioned to fire. Then, one of Cord's men wheeled his horse around. I didn't sign up for this, he muttered. Another followed. Then, another. Within moments, 5 of the 8 had turned back. Cord's face went purple with rage. You cowards! Hargrove will. Hargrove can go to hell, one of the deserters called back. I ain't dying for his greed. Cord and the 2 remaining men sat alone now, facing 9 guns. Even Cord wasn't fool enough to push those odds. With a snarl, he yanked his horse around and galloped after his retreating men. The deputy let out a long breath. That was some talking, Matthews. Isaac shrugged, but Emma saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly as he lowered his rifle. He'd been prepared to fight, to kill, and the weight of that readiness showed in his eyes. Let's move, the deputy said, before he comes back with reinforcements. They rode hard for the next 2 hours, putting distance between themselves and any pursuit. As the sun set, they reached a small town with a marshal's way station. The deputy arranged for food and safe lodging. Emma collapsed onto a real bed for the first time in 2 days. Every muscle ached. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. They'd escaped Hargrove's men. They had federal protection. They were going to make it to Omaha. She was going to win. A soft knock made her sit up. Isaac stood in the doorway, looking as exhausted as she felt. Can I come in? Emma knew she should say no. Unmarried men and women didn't share rooms, even in desperate circumstances. But propriety seemed ridiculous after everything they'd been through. Yes. Isaac closed the door but stayed near it, respecting boundaries. Just wanted to make sure you're all right. I'm alive. That's something. Emma rubbed her face. Isaac, what you did today, talking Cord down, that was incredible. You saved us from a gunfight. I just told the truth. Men like that, they're not loyal. They're mercenaries. Point that out and they remember they're only in it for the money. Still, you could have just started shooting. Most men would have. Isaac was quiet for a moment. I've done enough killing for one lifetime. If I can win a fight with words instead of bullets, I'll take it every time. Emma stood and crossed to him. He looked surprised, but didn't back away. Up close, she could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw. On impulse, she reached up and touched his face, the same way he'd touched hers the night before. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for helping me, for protecting me, for not giving up. Isaac's eyes darkened. His hand came up to cover hers, pressing it against his cheek. Emma, whatever he was going to say, was lost as Emma rose up on her toes and kissed him. It was meant to be brief, a gesture of gratitude. But the moment their lips met, something ignited. Isaac made a low sound in his throat and pulled her closer, his arms coming around her waist. And Emma melted into him. The kiss deepened. Emma's hand slid into his hair, and Isaac's grip tightened, holding her like she was precious and fragile and vital all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Emma," he said roughly, "we shouldn't. I know. If someone sees..." "I don't care." Emma's voice was fierce. "I don't care about propriety or what people think. Tomorrow we ride into Omaha and face Hargrove in front of the marshal. Tomorrow we might win, or we might lose everything. But tonight, right now, I just want to feel something other than fear and anger." Isaac's eyes searched hers. "What do you want to feel?" "This." Emma kissed him again, softer this time. "Hope. Connection. Like I'm not alone anymore." "You're not alone," Isaac promised against her lips. "You've got me. For as long as you want me." "What if I want you for a very long time?" Isaac pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "Then you've got me for a very long time." They stood there, holding each other, as the lamp burned low. Emma knew she should send him away, maintain some semblance of decency. But she couldn't make herself let go. Isaac was solid and warm and steady, and she needed that steadiness more than she needed society's approval. Eventually, Isaac stepped back with visible reluctance. "I should go. Let you rest." "Stay." The word was out before Emma could stop it. At his shocked expression, she clarified quickly. "Not like that. Just stay until I fall asleep. Please, I don't want to be alone." Isaac hesitated, clearly torn. Then he nodded. "All right, but I'm staying in that chair, and the door stays unlocked. Deal." Isaac settled into the room's single wooden chair while Emma lay back on the bed. She expected to feel awkward, but instead there was comfort in his presence, in the sound of his breathing, in knowing he was there, keeping watch. "Isaac?" she said into the darkness. "Yeah?" She said Nord or supposed Betri, what's nus, supposed to round her. "Like you mentioned in the story, where there are not her him, where there must place where lost whiles white, al leptiant. Cone let dranding attempt to get out of them. I also minded then, call the crime and pecador spose. What happens after? If we win, if Hargrove goes to prison, what happens to us? What do you want to happen?" Emma thought about it. "I want to rebuild my farm, plant crops, raise animals, make it what my parents dreamed it could be." She paused. "I'd like help with that, if you're interested." She heard the smile in his voice. "Are you offering me a job, Miss Wade?" "I'm offering you a partnership. And maybe, eventually, something more." The chair creaked as Isaac shifted. "Emma, I'm a drifter, a former Confederate soldier with nothing to his name but a horse and a gun. I've got no land, no prospects, no future. Neither do I. Not yet. But we could build one together." Emma rolled onto her side to face him. "Unless you want to keep drifting." "No." Isaac's voice was quiet but firm. I'm done drifting. I think I've been looking for a reason to stop for a long time. Maybe I just needed to find the right person to stop for. Emma's heart swelled. Is that a yes? That's a yes. We win this thing tomorrow, I'm staying. Helping you rebuild. Being whatever you need me to be. I need you to be you, Emma said. Just you. That's enough. Sleep claimed her before Isaac could respond. But she fell asleep, smiling, more hopeful than she'd been in months. They reached Omaha the next afternoon. The city was bigger than Emma had ever seen, with brick buildings and paved streets, and more people than she could count. The deputy led them straight to the marshal's office. Marshal Hayes was a grizzled man in his 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He listened to their story, examined the evidence, and called in a territorial judge to review the documents. The judge, a severe woman named Margaret Thornton, went through every paper with meticulous care. Finally, she looked up. This is clear evidence of fraud, forgery, and corruption. Multiple counts across multiple victims. She looked at Hayes. We need to issue a warrant immediately. Hayes nodded. Already on it. I'll send rangers to arrest Hargrove and his accomplices. Miss Wade, Mr. Matthews, I'll need you to stay in Omaha to testify when this goes to trial. Emma's knees went weak with relief. So it's real? You're really going to arrest him? It's real, Judge Thornton said. Malachi Hargrove's criminal enterprise ends today. The next few days passed in a blur. Rangers rode out to arrest Hargrove. The banker tried to resist, but with federal marshals at his door, even his hired guns abandoned him. He was brought to Omaha in chains, screaming threats and bribery offers all the way. The trial was swift. With 5 families testifying and documentary evidence proving fraud, the verdict was never in doubt. Malachi Hargrove was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His assets were seized and used to compensate his victims. Emma got her farm back. The original mortgage was reinstated with fair terms she could actually meet. Brennan got his ranch. The Johnsons, the Caldwells, all of them were made whole again. Standing on the courthouse steps after the sentencing, Emma felt something lift from her chest. The weight she'd been carrying since her parents died, the fear and anger and desperation, it all drained away. We won, she whispered. Isaac squeezed her hand. You won. You fought for what was right, and you won. We won, Emma corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Around them, the other families were celebrating, hugging, crying with relief. Sarah Brennan invited everyone to dinner. Matthew Johnson was already planning how to rebuild his soddy into a real house. The Caldwells were arguing happily about whether to plant wheat or corn first. Emma looked at Isaac. Ready to go home? Home. Isaac tested the word like it was foreign. Then he smiled. Yeah, I'm ready. They rode back to Emma's farm 3 days later. The place looked different in the spring sunlight. No longer threatening, but hopeful. The fields were muddy and overgrown. The barn needed repairs, and the house showed signs of Hargrove's men's brief invasion. But it was hers. Legally, officially, permanently, hers. It's going to take a lot of work, Emma said, looking at the neglected land. Good thing there's 2 of us then. Isaac dismounted and offered her his hand. Emma took it and let him help her down. They stood together in the yard where she'd first seen him, where he'd stood up to Hargrove's men and changed everything. Isaac? She ignored or supposed between he rakewatching for self-times and luck around her. Like he months Gus, and then Tories another who said, their rest place where a lost lives woke, and then a tout, then tired. Cone let Drianding it didn't shout at that playing. Paulo film I was comment, call the coin, and to responds the tours the striding for their daughterage. Yeah? She said nord or supposed Betry, what's nus? Supposed to round her. Like you mentioned in the story, where there are not her hair. Where there must place, where lost whiles white. Ow, left tie-end. Cone let Dranding attempt to get out of them. I also minded then, call the climb and pecador spose. I love you. The words hung in the air. Isaac went very still. Then he cupped her face in both hands and kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you too. Have since that first day, probably. When you stood in the mud and refused to give up even when you were terrified. Emma laughed, the sound full of joy. We're both fools then, falling in love in the middle of a war against a corrupt banker. Best kind of love story, Isaac said. The kind where you fight side by side and come out stronger. They spent the rest of the day assessing the farm, making plans. The spring planting season wasn't over yet. If they worked hard, they could still get crops in the ground. The barn needed new boards. The fence needed mending. The vegetable garden was full of weeds. But as the sun set, they sat together on the porch steps, and Emma felt a contentment she'd never known. Isaac's arm was around her shoulders, solid and warm. His gun belt hung on a peg inside, no longer needed. The evening birds sang, and somewhere in the distance, a cow lowed. My father used to sit right here every evening, Emma said quietly. He'd smoke his pipe and watch the sunset and say this was the best part of the day. I never understood what he meant. She leaned into Isaac. I think I do now. Isaac pressed a kiss to her temple. Tell me about them. Your parents. So Emma did. She told him about her father's careful record-keeping and her mother's herb garden. About how they'd crossed the prairie in a covered wagon before Emma was born. How they'd built the farm from nothing. About winter evenings by the fire and summer days in the fields. About loss and love and legacy. Isaac listened. Really listened. And Emma felt another piece of her heart heal. When full darkness fell, they went inside. Emma lit lamps and started preparing supper while Isaac brought in their supplies. It was domestic and ordinary and absolutely perfect. This is good, Isaac said suddenly. Emma looked up from slicing bread. What is? This. You and me. A home to build. Work to do. He set down the bag he was carrying. I spent so long running from who I was, trying to outrun my past. But here with you, I don't feel like I'm running anymore. I feel like I've finally found where I belong. Emma crossed to him. You do belong here. With me. Isaac pulled her close. Marry me. Emma's breath caught. What? Marry me, Isaac repeated. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few days. But Emma, I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to plant crops and raise children and grow old together on this land." He searched her face. "So marry me, please." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Yes. Yes?" She lead more der supposed bet me once bless. Så hast around her. Like you mentioned this day, the where there are not her him. They're my place where a lost allows white. Yes? Cone let dranding attend to get out of him. Clow fell minded then, all the crime punted or spoons the twice. Yes, Emma laughed and cried at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. Yes. Isaac kissed her, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around in the small kitchen. When he set her down, both of them were laughing. Tomorrow, Emma decided. We'll go into town tomorrow and find a preacher. I don't want to wait. Neither do I. They married the next afternoon in a small church in Crawford. Sarah Brennan stood as Emma's witness. Thomas Brennan stood as Isaac's. The preacher was an old man with kind eyes, who asked no questions about the speed of the courtship, just smiled, and said love was always worth celebrating. Emma wore her mother's best dress, carefully preserved. Isaac wore a new shirt purchased that morning. They said their vows with hands clasped and eyes locked. And when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Isaac kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. The Brennans threw them a small celebration. Other families came, people who'd heard about their fight against Hargrove and wanted to show support. There was food and music and dancing. Emma danced with Isaac under the spring stars, his arms around her, his heartbeat steady against her ear. Happy? Isaac murmured. Incredibly. Good. Because I plan to keep you happy for the next 50 years or so. Emma tilted her head back to look at him. Only 50? All right, 60. But that's my final offer. She kissed him, not caring who was watching. Deal. They rode back to the farm as the sun was rising, painting the prairie in shades of gold and pink. Emma's farm. Their farm now. Isaac helped her down from Rosie, and they stood together, watching the light spread across the land. You know what I'm thinking? Emma said. What? I'm thinking about all the things we need to do. Planting, repairs, building a better barn. Maybe expanding the house eventually. She smiled. I'm thinking we have a lot of work ahead of us. Isaac wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. I'm not afraid of hard work. Neither am I. Then we'll do it together. Isaac rested his chin on top of her head. Build something good, something that lasts. Emma covered his hands with hers, lacing their fingers together. In the distance, a rooster crowed. Rosie whinnied from the barn. The morning wind carried the scent of wet earth and new growth. Spring, Emma thought. New beginnings. Second chances. Love found in the middle of a fight. A partnership built on trust and determination, and the refusal to give up. This was what her father meant when he said the sunset was the best part of the day. Not the ending, but the promise of tomorrow. The knowledge that you'd survived another day and earned another chance to build something good. Emma turned in Isaac's arms and kissed him as the sun rose higher. Welcome home, husband. Isaac smiled against her lips. Welcome home, wife. They had work to do, fields to plant, a future to build, a life to live together. But for this moment, they just stood on the porch of their farmhouse and watched the day begin. Two survivors who'd found each other and refused to let go. The prairie stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility. And for the first time in a very long time, Emma looked at that horizon and saw hope. They spent the morning working side by side. Isaac repaired the broken fence posts, while Emma tackled the overgrown vegetable garden. The spring sun was warm on their backs, and despite the hard work, Emma found herself smiling. This was what partnership looked like. Two people building something together, each bringing their own strength. Around midday, Isaac came to find her in the garden. His shirt was damp with sweat. Dirt streaked across his forearms. "You should see the south pasture. The winter didn't damage it as badly as I thought. We could have cattle grazing there by summer, if we can afford to buy stock." Emma wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "The money from the court settlement should cover it. Maybe a dozen head to start. Build from there." "Smart." Isaac crouched beside her, examining the turned soil. "Your father taught you well. He taught me that land is more than property. It's legacy. It's home." Emma looked at the house, at the fields stretching beyond. "I want our children to know that too. Someday." Isaac's hand found hers in the dirt. "Our children. I like the sound of that." Emma squeezed his fingers. "So do I." They worked through the afternoon, stopping only for water and brief rests. As the sun began its descent, Isaac declared the fence secure enough for now, and Emma had cleared half the garden. Progress. Real, tangible progress. That evening, they sat together on the porch steps again. It was becoming their ritual, this quiet time as day faded to night. Isaac's arm was around Emma's shoulders, her head resting against his chest. The evening was cool and peaceful, broken only by the sounds of crickets and the distant call of an owl. "You know what I realized today?" Emma said softly. "What's that?" "For the first time since my parents died, I didn't wake up afraid. I didn't spend the day wondering if I'd lose everything again." She tilted her head to look up at him. "I felt safe. Because of you." Isaac's arm tightened around her. "You made yourself safe, Emma. You fought for what was yours. I just helped." "You did more than help. You stood with me when you could have walked away. You risked your life for a stranger's farm." Emma touched his face gently. "You gave me hope when I had none left. You gave me a reason to stop running," Isaac replied quietly. "A reason to believe I could be more than just a soldier with blood on his hands. You saw something good in me when I couldn't see it myself." Emma kissed him, slow and tender. When they parted, she whispered, "I love you, Isaac Matthews." "I love you too, Emma Matthews." He smiled at the name. "Still getting used to that." "Me too. But I like it." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged, one by one. Somewhere in the barn, Rosie shuffled in her stall. The wind carried the scent of turned earth and growing things. Everything felt right, settled, like pieces finally falling into place. "Tomorrow I'll start on the barn repairs," Isaac said. "And we should ride into town, order seeds for planting. Maybe talk to Johnson about borrowing his plow." Emma nodded. "And I'll finish the garden, start planning what to plant where. My mother always said onions near the tomatoes kept the pests away." Sounds like a plan. Isaac pressed a kiss to the top of her head. We're going to make this work, Emma. This farm, this life. We're going to build something that lasts. I know we will. Emma's voice was full of quiet certainty. Because we're not doing it alone anymore. We have each other. The next morning, Emma woke in Isaac's arms. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, painting golden stripes across the quilt that had been her mother's. For a moment, she just lay there, listening to Isaac's steady breathing, feeling the warmth of his body beside hers. This was peace. This was home. Isaac stirred, his arm tightening around her waist. Morning, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Good morning, husband. He smiled without opening his eyes. I'll never get tired of hearing you call me that. Emma turned in his arms to face him. In the morning light, his features were softer, the hard edges worn away by sleep and contentment. We should get up. There's work to do. In a minute. Isaac pulled her closer, kissing her forehead, her nose, her lips. Let me enjoy this first. Waking up next to my wife in our home. It's more than I ever thought I'd have. Emma's heart swelled. You deserve it. You deserve happiness and peace and a home. Don't ever doubt that. I don't. Not anymore. Isaac's eyes opened, clear blue in the sunlight. You taught me that. You taught me I could be more than my past. They rose together and started their day. Emma made coffee and breakfast while Isaac tended the animals. When he came back inside, she had eggs and bread on the table, steam rising from the coffee pot. They ate together, making plans, talking about the future, small moments, ordinary moments that felt precious because they'd been so hard won. After breakfast, they rode into Crawford together. The town was busy with spring activity. Farmers buying supplies, women shopping at the general store. People nodded to Emma and Isaac as they passed, and Emma noticed the respect in their eyes. Word had spread about their fight against Hargrove. They'd become symbols of something, she realized. Proof that standing up to corruption could work. At the seed merchant, Isaac haggled for fair prices, while Emma selected varieties. Tomatoes, beans, squash, corn. Her mother's garden had always been abundant, and Emma was determined to match it. The merchant threw in a packet of sunflower seeds for free, saying every farm needed sunflowers for luck. They were loading supplies into the wagon when Thomas Brennan rode up. Emma! Isaac! Glad I caught you. There's a barn raising at the Johnson place this Saturday. Whole community's coming together to help them rebuild. Thought you'd want to know. Emma smiled. We'll be there. Tell Matthew we'll bring food. After Brennan rode off, Isaac looked at Emma with raised eyebrows. You planning to cook for a whole barn raising? I'm planning for us to cook together, Emma corrected. Unless you're afraid of a kitchen? I fought in a war. I think I can handle making a pie. Emma laughed, and the sound felt free and easy. They finished their errands and rode home. The wagon loaded with supplies and their future full of possibility. That evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, they sat on the porch again. It had become their place, this weathered wooden step, where they could look out over the land they were building together and talk about everything and nothing. Do you ever think about going back? Emma asked quietly. To Georgia, to see if any of your family made it. Isaac was silent for a long moment. Sometimes. But I don't know if I could handle what I'd find. The house burned. My parents were gone before the war ended. My sister married and moved north. There's nothing left there but ghosts. Maybe someday, Emma said. When you're ready, we could go together. Isaac looked at her with such tenderness it made her breath catch. Maybe, but this is home now. You're home. Whatever ghosts I left behind in Georgia, they don't have power over me anymore. Not when I have this. Have you? Emma leaned into him, breathing in the scent of him, soap and leather and earth. I used to think I'd spend my whole life on this farm, never going anywhere, never doing anything but surviving. I thought that was enough. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. But you showed me it could be more, that I could have a partner, that surviving could turn into thriving. We'll thrive together, Isaac promised. Build this farm into something your parents would be proud of. Raise children who know they're loved. Grow old watching sunsets from this porch. He smiled. Doesn't sound like a bad life. It sounds perfect. They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the prairie in shades of purple and pink. Somewhere in the fields, a meadowlark sang its evening song. The spring breeze carried the promise of rain, good for the planting. Everything felt balanced, right? Like the world had finally aligned the way it was meant to. Saturday came with perfect weather for a barn raising. Emma and Isaac rode to the Johnson place with a wagon full of food and found half the county already there. Men were hauling lumber and driving posts, while women set up tables and minded children. It was community in action, people helping people, the way the frontier had always survived. Isaac joined the men, his Confederate past forgotten or forgiven in the face of good work that needed doing. Emma worked with the women, preparing food and watching friendships form. Sarah Brennan introduced her to other wives, and Rachel Caldwell pulled her aside to thank her again for having the courage to stand up first. By afternoon, the barn's frame stood tall and strong. The men were hammering in roof boards while children ran between their legs and dogs barked at nothing. Emma stood with Isaac's arm around her, watching Matthew Johnson beam with pride at his new barn, and felt her throat tighten with emotion. This is what it's about, she said quietly. Not just the land or the buildings. It's this. People taking care of each other. Isaac nodded. It's what I fought for in the war, even if I didn't understand it then. Community. Home. The right to build a life without someone taking it away. You have that now. We both do. As the sun began to set, someone brought out a fiddle. Music filled the air, and soon people were dancing. Isaac pulled Emma into the circle, and even though neither of them were particularly graceful, they danced together, laughing and breathless and happy. When the music slowed, Isaac held Emma close. You know what I'm most grateful for? He murmured. What? That I rode through Crawford that day. That I saw you standing in the mud, refusing to give up. That I decided to stay instead of drifting on. He pulled back to look at her. Every choice I made led me here. To you. And I wouldn't change a single one. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm grateful too. For you. For this life. For second chances. I thought I'd lost everything. But I found something better. I found us. They kissed as the fiddle played, surrounded by their community, their friends, their future. When they pulled apart, Emma saw Thomas Brennan watching them with a knowing smile, and Sarah Brennan dabbing at her eyes. They rode home under the stars, tired and happy. The next day would bring more work, more challenges, more of the endless tasks that came with farming. But they would face it together, partners in every way that mattered. Isaac helped Emma down from the wagon, and they stood together in front of their house, their home, looking at the life they were building. "Ready to go inside, Mrs. Matthews?" Isaac asked with a smile. Emma took his hand. "Ready, Mr. Matthews." They walked up the porch steps together, and as Isaac opened the door, Emma looked back one last time at the prairie stretching endlessly under the starlight. Her parents had dreamed of a legacy here. She and Isaac would make that dream real. They would plant and harvest, build and grow, love and be loved. They would create something that would last long after they were gone. And it would all start here, with a woman who refused to give up, and a man who finally found his reason to stay. Emma followed Isaac inside and closed the door on the night. Tomorrow would come soon enough, with its work and its challenges. But tonight, she was content to simply be home with the man she loved, building a future, one day at a time. She lost everything to a banker's greed. A Confederate soldier helped her take it all back.